Hey there, it's a slot machine here, and we are live with Josh from Know Your Slots, and we're waiting for people to come on in. I'm wondering, how has things been for you?
Things have been great. Really, really good year, all things considered. How about yourself?
Things have been good. Just mostly wrapping up finals. Had a math final the other week, and looking forward to my next casino trip, which is like totally forgot. Train has left the station, but just looking forward to my next casino trip someday.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so I'm like wondering. Yeah, so I'm like wondering, how do you get your name? Know Your Slots.
I was just looking for something very clear and straightforward. I work in marketing as my day job. That's what I do for a living. And so I try to, and I also used to work in journalism. So clarity for me is a big point. And so I thought the name would just be you would know what you're coming to if you go to a website called Know Your Slots, right? So and I have different goals with what I write about, but everything's really focused on helping people feel a little bit more confident, a little bit stronger about what goes on when you're in a casino. So
That is so cool. I've always been fascinated with marketing, and I'm just like really interested in like what kind. If you don't mind me asking, what kind of marketing do you do?
I work for a small tech firm, and so I do online marketing. So I do blog posts, I write ad copy, create graphics, all that kind of stuff. It's not it's what I went to school for, but it's not where my career path started. But I kind of came back around a few years ago, and I'm having a great time with it. So it's a lot of fun.
I can imagine marketing is definitely something I'm like hoping to get into after I graduate from college. And also, hey, like in the chat, hey Steven, hey Beth, hey Gamma Hot Queen Slot, hey Kyla, and Kugel's Rule 54. Kyle's asking if we could play Firelink next time.
That's a good choice. That's a very good game.
What do you like about Firelink?
The thing I've always liked about Firelink is I don't feel like it's as difficult to get the link and get that fireball bonus, because I know it's only 4 and they could just always have 3 show up, right? But I feel like it's a little bit more balanced in that way. Whereas I feel like a lightning link, a locket link, it can be harder to get that bonus. So to me, it feels a little more balanced out than the others in terms of how often you get it. And so for me, that's more fun because everybody wants to get to that bonus, of course.
Definitely, and for me, I feel like that it is the exact opposite, right? Like I feel like that on Dragon Link, Lightning Link, the bone goes poop poop poop. But on Fire Link, I'm like spin into eternity.
And it's of course fun that you get those extra chances to get more spaces. You know, if you unlock some more rows, you can get some more chances to spin. And so I think it's just a little bit different in that way. And so I think that's what makes it fun.
Definitely. I really hope that on the new Lightning Link and Dragon Link that they will have it so that you can like build columns up. Like as you get balls, the columns just keep building up and up and up. Like Fire Link.
I haven't seen anything like that yet, but it wouldn't surprise me. Many times these companies borrow ideas from each other. And so, something you see in one game will suddenly pop up on a bunch of them. And we certainly saw that when Lightning Link first came out. So you never know.
Definitely. And I feel that's kind of like the Apple versus Google thingy, where the companies compete with each other.
Exactly.
Yes. And for like, yeah, and I'm also, and for like, and I do feel that like for Firelink, that can be really volatile. Do you get that same impression?
To some degree, yeah. I would say that it's definitely up there. It's definitely not the hardest game, though, either. I think there's definitely games that are tougher than that. And I think part of the reason for that is just simply, as I said, I think they've balanced the game out a little bit more. They had more time to look at what went well and what could use some work from the games that came before it. That said, though, they do have sequels coming out, and those are pushing it harder. Like the Power 4, you can get the additional rows, which I'm sure makes that game even harder to bonus. And now they have a couple more that we saw at G2E that are coming. So, like Golden Firelink. So I think all of that's just going to push it to be a little bit tougher. But the good news is those original games are still around in case you just want to play the first one.
Yes. Yeah, I've definitely seen just how absolutely tough it is to get anything on Wonderful Boost. I've seen like people going live on the game, and it's definitely an upward swim. Yeah, and for me personally, what I've been absorbing, I'm not sure if this is true or not, but it feels like the older games more forgiving when it comes to winning losses versus losses in the newer games. You either get a really big sum of money or you just lose it all in full spin.
Yeah, there's definitely a trend that's happened over the past, let's say, 10 years with slot machines where a few things have happened. One is that the minimum bets have gone up, which makes sense. Money, over time, that's just going to happen. But the difficulty of the games have gone up. People want bigger bonuses, but to do that, they have to make the games tougher, right? People used to be happy with a 25 times win on their bonus. If you bet $1, you win $25, and that used to be exciting. But now people want $50. They want $100. They want that $500 major ball to fall in Lightning Link. To be able to offer those opportunities, they've got to pull money from somewhere else. And that means the base game might be tougher. You might not bonus as often. And so there's a number of trends that have certainly happened that have made games more volatile. And that means, it's you win bigger, but less often. And so, even if the payback percentage is exactly the same, an older machine is most likely going to pay you smaller amounts more often than a newer game, which is going to be tougher. As a general rule, like there's certain games that'll be more difficult than others any time, but that's definitely a pattern that's established over time.
I can definitely see that trend. And I know that when I play my games at home, like Jade Monkey, Mardi Gras Madness, Village People Party, it's like you get like a bunch. It's like I'm like literally so primed for that big bonus, but the game gets all excited for you when you get that really tiny bonus. But the base games, seem like they just pay out more evenly.
You get those 5 of a kind line hits and all of those good things on those games, and when you get them, and when I play them even now, I kind of get surprised, like, wow, it pays me that much for just a line hit, because you forget that that's how they were set up back in the day.
Yes.
So yeah, I definitely agree with you on that. The games play differently now, and that's by design. Players wouldn't be in the casinos if players didn't want this. But for those of us who sometimes like an easier game, you fortunately, although they're thinning out, there's still the older machines in many casinos.
Definitely. Pardon me. Also, yeah, this thing that really surprised me between old machines and new machines is the fact that it seems like it's the fact that when you even on Roman Egypt and Mardi Gras Madness, it's like you get a really big bonus trickle. On mine, you get a really huge bonus trickle, and then you get this tiny little bonus.
Yeah. Well, the money's in there though, because I distinctly, vividly remember a Roman Egypt bonus where I got a 50 spin bonus, I believe it was, and the very first spin I won 600 times my bet. It was like a 50-cent bet, so what is that, $300 or something like that?
Gosh.
And so the money's there if everything lines up, but it's certainly designed to pay smaller amounts more often, for sure. And so like a Roman Egypt, if I remember correctly, that's the one that's got it was 2 bonus symbols gets you the bonus, so really easy to get in there. So yeah, definitely on games like that, it was designed to bonus more frequently, smaller bonuses, but every slot machine has some sort of navigation to a big win, so it can certainly happen.
Yeah, I'm curious about what slot machines nowadays do you feel have the best potential for the biggest win the quickest?
Well, the biggest win the quickest would be anything with a grand that's $10,000, but you have to really get lucky. But I've been surprised by some games. When Dancing Drums first came out, I got a major, I think, the second time I ever played it, and I've never had one since. But it certainly shows you that potential is there, even like on a less than $1 bet. So I think that's kind of exciting, and I think that's part of it. But keeping on Dancing Drums for a second, I also like that you can lower the number of gold symbols and amplify the bet. So you can just focus on the gold coins. I actually played once where if I was doing that bet, I would have hand paid, but because I was doing 88 cents and it was the lower pay, I got $200, right? And so it's just the fact that possibility is there, even on a weird bet, is kind of interesting. So yeah, I mean, I think even the newer games, they have some interesting pathways, but I think they're designed to pay big wins less often. But when you get those wins, they can be really substantial. My first personal hand pay in a casino was in July. I was playing one of those Gold Stacks 88 machines that Aristocrat has. I got the progressive pick, and I won a $1,300 hand pay because I got the major, and it was on $1.76. And I thought that was really exciting because I was expecting a $50 mini because it was built up, and I was like, I want that $50 mini, and then I got a $1,300 major, so it was perfect.
That is jackpot gold right there. And next time I go to casino, I definitely got to pay attention to the dancing drum gold symbols like you mentioned. And also, Cougar's Rule says the old machines are for really small bets. The newer ones seem to have higher min bets.
It's true. It's true. A lot of the newer machines that they've taken away, in many cases, the ability to pick your lines. So picking your lines was one way to lower your bet. Like if it
Yeah.
was a 40 line machine, you could have done 10 lines, and 10 lines brings the bet down. My mom was never a big gambler, but she would be happy to sit at a machine with a 20-cent bet with her beer and her cigarette and play all afternoon. And that was great for her, right? But like those machines are few and far between now because the minimum bets are 50 cents, 75 cents, a
Yeah.
dollar, right? And the max bet, you might as well be in the high limit room. Some of these are $10, $20 on some of these machines. And so yeah, it's definitely been changing quickly. And so the good news is some of the manufacturers have kept a subset of machines where you can still do that. They've brought back old games and kept those abilities on the old
Houston, we
games.
got a problem here. We got some frozen Wi-Fi going, and looks like I'm gonna be refreshing 1 second.
Okay. Yeah, Cooks, I agree. My mom was one of those people too. She just loved the ability to bet very small. So I'm 100% with you on that one.
Hey, I'm back. I'm not sure what happened.
No problem. I see you loud and clear.
All good. And also, I do find it. I remember somebody else talking about the fact that you used to be able to take $100 into the casino, and you used to just be able to put it in the machine, and you can last the entire afternoon just fine. Not anymore.
Yeah, I mean it depends on your betting style, right? When I was like a 40-cent, 50-cent better, $200, yeah, 100's probably tough now. $200 could certainly last you an afternoon. I sort of have this rule of thumb. It's really simple back of the napkin math, but whatever your bet is, if you want to be able to last 4 hours safely, you should have 500 times your bet. So if you're betting a dollar spin and you're spending less than $500, you are risking that you run out of money faster than you want to. You don't have to do that, but that's like if you really want to make sure your trip lasts, you want to build in some breathing room, and maybe you'll go home with some money. Great, but just you don't want to go home like sort of defeated every single time. And so if you go in and you're betting a dollar spin and you have $20, you could be done in 5 minutes, right? So you want to make sure you factor what you want to bet into your plan.
That is some really good advice. And I'm like wondering do you have any? I'm like curious, like, do you have any like superstitions?
I try to not play into the superstitions mentally. I spend a lot of time writing on my site about superstitions because I realize that people have a lot of them. Some of them, I mean, I consider most of them harmless, right? Like, the hot and cold machine, it can be harmless or cannot because people could be chasing a jackpot and saying it hasn't paid. But, if machine is hot and you don't want to move, I see that's harmless. You know what I mean? I think that a lot of, rubbing the screen, all those types of things, slapping the buttons, although I'm not personally a fan of that. I mean, all of that stuff to me is just, it's relatively harmless as long as you don't break a machine or anything. But I don't tend to have many superstitions about things. I just more tend to I'll say the one thing that happens to me is I get frustrated when every other machine around me is in a bonus and I can't seem to make anything happen. It's like, how could every single person around me have a bonus? Speaking of which, Lori is one of the luckiest people I know. And so she's definitely one of those people I'm envious of because she seems to always do really well. And good to see you, Lori. It's always nice to see your face. But yeah, I think that's the one thing, and that's not really superstition. That's more managing your gambling emotions, because gambling is a roller coaster for sure.
It definitely is. And there's definitely times when like walking to the casino, either doing a live stream or looking to record a video, and literally everybody else is getting the big, beautiful bonuses, but I just can't get any. But I cannot even get one ball on Dragon Link that day.
Right. So Lori's question's a great one. Do I think that putting in cash or Tino makes a difference? I don't. And the reason why is that the reality is that you could literally just go to take the Tito, bring it to a ticket machine, make it cash if you really were worried. But I don't think it makes any difference. I think that ultimately, it's really just a way of counting the money. And I think the only thing that I think a Tito is bad about is that if it disconnects you from your money, right? So if you take $100 Tito and you run it up to $1,000 and you're holding a ticket, it's very different than if you're holding 10 $100 bills. And I think it feels much more real when you're holding cash. So I personally have taken on that mindset of, if I build a ticket up, let's break it down. And so that way I have to think every time I'm putting money into the machine and keep track of where I am. But that's more of a money management system. Yeah, gamblers are known. It doesn't make a difference. It's not the paybacks don't change or anything like that. I think mostly it's just from a psychological perspective, it's better just to break those big tickets down so you're holding cash and think about it as cash instead of a ticket.
Definitely. And I did make a mistake. I do remember, like, I do remember that whenever I'm gambling, and speaking of money management, that if I can get a Tito over $20, even if it's just $20.01, that 1 cent is actually extra money. So what I do is I take the Tito, I put it in my right when I'm playing into my right pocket, so I not touch it for the duration of the trip, knowing that I'll go home with at least $20 plus 1 cent.
I like it. Yeah, Neely's got that. Neely's got that concept of like the cash me out. I think it's called, where if he gets over $25 on a 20, he'll cash it out, and that way he locks in a profit. And you can always put another 20 in, and you can start a new session, but you've locked in a profit. It's a good healthy mindset to have, to remind yourself when you're ahead to take some gains for sure.
It definitely is. And Naomi X is asking, what is your favorite game to play?
Yeah, I am a weird creature when it comes to slots. I do like a lower volatility slot, and so the game that I've been playing the most over the past couple of years has been the Quick Spin series, particularly the Supercharged Sevens, the original one. I have had 3 top wedge wins on that game in like a 3-month window at one point. So that top wedge isn't hugely difficult to get. I mean, it's not easy, but it's definitely not the hardest to get compared to other top prizes. And I find it's a good, like, on point multiplier days, or days where the casino's encouraging you to play more. I find it's a very good game to rack up the points, because it tends to be a relatively even ride for much of the journey. And every once in a while you'll have a rough session or you'll have a good session, but like, I find that it's not hard to ride that train for a long time. And again, and I'll throw a really left field one in. I've been definitely getting into Lightning Zap recently, and that's a game I avoided like the plague when it first came out, but I've come to appreciate it because you can do as little as 10 cents a zap.
Yes.
And you can do, and even, it's a fast-paced game, but when you get those multipliers and when you get those big wins, it can be quite substantial. And so I do find it to be a fun game.
I'm for the people who do not know what Lightning Zap is, can you explain how the game mechanics look? Because I'm like having a hard time picturing it in my mind right now.
Sure. So Lightning Zap doesn't have any reels. It's one of sort of a growing number of games that takes a different approach. You have a bunch of orbs with different money values. You hit the button, and either the lightning zaps to the top or it doesn't. If it zaps to the top, it'll blow up at least 3 of the numbers, and whatever it blows up, you win. On occasion, it can introduce a multiplier before it blows up the numbers, but there's no real like bonus round or anything like that. It's designed to be a rapid fire game. But one thing that I've also learned, and it's been pretty common knowledge, is the payback percentage, because the game is faster paced, is higher. So you won't. So it's actually considered a lower volatility machine because it's in a tighter range than many slot machines.
That is so good to know. And the next time I go live, I definitely want to try that game out if I can find it.
I know it has it. They know they have it at Plaza. So if you're ever at the Plaza, they've got a giant cabinet, for instance. That's where I've seen it most recently.
Yes, and also J-Will is saying that I feel that casinos need to step up the game more in every way, not just having a host try to reach out.
I'm a fan of that. I think that the customer service aspect of things is a very important part of casinos. I will say that as someone who has almost never had a host experience, I've had one that I can actually recall, which was fine. But it's not at a property that I would regularly go to, so it's not as helpful as like a local property. I think that there's definitely challenges. Like I hear all sorts of stories about the players' desk not even knowing how their players club program works, and I get that a lot of these casino companies have been tinkering and making changes, and there's been acquisitions. You know, Caesars merged with Eldorado, and you've got Bally's who bought all these casinos and now rolling out their Bally's program as we speak. But the fact that you can't go to the desk and ask simple questions or understand how things works is a real problem, let alone actually getting real service. And so I think casinos reopened, and they were short-staffed, and they've come back to life, and they're making record money, and they have the budget to take some steps to make improvements there for sure. I 100% agree, J-Real.
Definitely, and I do wish, and what I really wish is that, and I'm like really hoping that this will come true. Is that casinos will like be able to like hire more people, like help rate the tables, and hire more people to like help with the casino in general.
I agree. I think you know, there's definitely steps being taken to reduce the number of people on the floor. You hear about cocktail waitresses having to use a machine to make drinks in Vegas instead of having a bartender. You hear about, you know, cashless gaming, so they can stop having to take cash out of every slot as often, which like reduces the amount of, you know, all these things that are, and I get that, but then that means you could redeploy that staff just as easily and have even better customer service. So there's definitely 2 ways to go about it, and it's not just cost cutting.
Definitely. I can definitely see them increasing the amount of customer service staff people at the help desk, people helping with the hotel, just make the casino run even more smoothly.
Yeah. I mean, one of the things that I used to see a lot and I don't see as much anymore is like there would be players desk people going around and looking at people who didn't have a card in the machine and offering to set them up with a card on the spot. And when I saw that at casinos, I thought that was really smart because, instead of making people figure out that players cards are a thing and that they can be a value, they can actually come to you and get you set up right then and there. And, just think little things like that, those little experiences make a big difference. I went into a casino once. I drove 4.5 hours to the casino. It was like 11 o'clock at night. I was practically a zombie because I had worked the day. And this VIP person came up and said, "Hey, Mr. O'Connell, we saw you just arrived and we just wanted to welcome you and let you know about something going on." I was like, that's cool, right? It can be a little freaky to people. It's like, hey, they're following me around. But the reality is that they if you have your player's card, they have all sorts of data. So use it for good, not evil,
Yes. And I can definitely, I do wonder, what do you think the future of player card data will be for players?
I mean, I think it's just going to be continual evolution, right? The main benefit to us as players is that we get these offers. I think as they know more about us, the offers get more specific and personal. I think that that's all good in the end for us. I mean, like they're basically, it's just like your supermarket card, right? It's a trade-off. You're letting them learn a little bit about you and you're getting something in return. At the supermarket, you're getting discounts on your groceries. At the casino, you're getting your free play and your room offers, right? So I am definitely of the mindset, and I think someone had asked in the chat like what the crazy superstition. I have seen all sorts of crazy superstitions about the player's card. Pull the player's card out and I suddenly win. But you're also giving it's not, you're not winning or losing because you pulled out the player's card. You just got your timing changed. But by the way, that player's card is 20 to 40% of your money back in terms of offers in most cases. So you're giving up something in return. And so I think that's an important part of that I think that any player who's savvy in any way knows that their player's card gives them something in return.
Definitely. And I've definitely seen people like where they say like if you put in your player's card, the casino knows that you're winning and they will crank down and they'll make the machine ice cold. Or they'll stop you from winning.
Right. And the machine doesn't know what time of day it is. It doesn't know who's playing, or at least, theoretically it could because the data might be there, but it's not using that information for any benefit or not benefit in its case. It doesn't know if it jackpotted 1 spin ago or 100 spins ago, other than there's a log that keeps track of it. And it's not determining your next spin based on that either. And so all of those things, going through some of the superstitions and the myths, all of that stuff we got to put this out of our head because it's very easy to look for the boogeyman to blame when we're having a bad gambling session. We want to blame someone. It's natural. Yep. We want to have an explanation. Casinos make tons of money without having to do any of that nonsense. And that's something we just have to understand and accept. These games are designed to win over time. And so we have to accept that this is our entertainment budget. And if we go in there, whatever we're planning on spending, we have to expect it's going to be spent. And if we go home and we have money in our pocket, that's great. That's the most important thing. And by the way, hi, Hope. I saw the chat on the bottom. I just want to say hello to Hope, too.
Hey, Hope. And Lori does agree. That's like why she cashes out.
Very smart, Lori. See, this is one of the reasons why you do so well, because you do keep very good track of what's going on. So that's awesome.
And also, I'm like wondering, what do you think is the most damaging superstition that players have, or what do you think what do you think is the most damaging superstition that players could have?
To me, the damaging superstitions are the ones that try to get people to keep playing or be less disciplined. And so, like, an example of that would be, oh, the game hasn't paid me in so long. I'm due for a bonus. I'm due for a win. And we know that, if understanding how slots work, that the next spin is not determined by the previous spins in pretty much every case. There's so few exceptions, like the machines that let you build equity, but those are very few and far between as a percentage of the casino floor. And so the reality is that we just need the most emotional side of it. It's like, I've seen people chase the pot. The pot's full. It's got to close. Yeah. It's been so long. Like I find those kind of dangerous, but yet the game makers know that they work because they keep putting them on the machines, right? So those are the ones I think are the most dangerous. I think, as I said, most superstitions are benign. You can believe them or not believe them, and they won't necessarily harm or help you. But the ones that can make players make bad decisions for themselves is the ones I think are the most harmful. Not because the players themselves are doing a bad thing. It's just I don't like seeing people get hurt. You occasionally see these examples in the casino, and it's always hard to watch.
It is. I once read, I think it was like this post, I can't remember where it was, but it was a while ago, of somebody of like somebody watching this person feed this dragon machine hundreds upon hundreds of dollars, and like there was like another family member trying to pull them away, and the person playing kept insisting that they're gonna hit the ground. I'm gonna hit the ground. It's due to hit. It's been sitting there maxed out ground for days. It's due to hit. And they kept feeding the machine money and money. It was I remember like on the group, it was like really heartbreaking to read.
Yeah, no, I mean it's tough. So and I've seen, like, I watched the guy who was buying $10 scratch off tickets in a convenience store, and he kept coming back and saying last two, scratched them off, lost, went to the car, grabbed another 20, last two. I eventually bought the next one just to stop the pattern and break it for the girl, and she said, oh, he bought one, and then the guy walked away and didn't buy another one. And like, I had someone say, well, maybe that the next one would have been a winner. It's like, yeah, but like, how many last ones can I watch someone do? It was just very, very difficult to watch. And so hopefully that broke a pattern for that day. I don't think it changed what he's going to do with his life, but like, it's just, I had this, I couldn't stand there and watch it any longer. Yeah,
it is definitely like really crushing to watch and hear about happening, but yet it's like a really strong reminder of just how careful we must be when it comes to gambling.
Yep. That's a good question, Hope. So I'm gonna answer this in two buckets, and Simon, we're gonna actually go back to something we talked about earlier.
Yes.
One thing that is absolutely true, although the documentation for this is very spotty, and I've been trying for 2.5 years to get this more on the record, and eventually I will. So I promise everybody I'm gonna keep working on this. Older slot machines, really old slot machines, in some cases can't be set as low of a payback as newer ones, because the sort of range that was expected by casinos has changed over time. So if you find a really old 20-year-old machine in the corner of the casino, it may be in a better position than that brand new slot machine that's been just put on the floor. Same thing goes with like the old 3-reel machines. Like, it's very well documented what Double Diamond pays, those 20-year-old Double Diamonds. And those are going to be different than some of the newer machines that are similarly set up, right? So I think that's something. So if you want to low bet, one of the things I do a lot, I'll find the oldest Double Diamond machine in the casino at 25 cents, 3 credits, and 75 cents a spin, and that usually gives me a good run. And then some like Goldfish, the original Goldfish machine. Like if you find the old school, not the remake, but the old school one that's really back then, that one can usually get you, like, because you can do 25 or 35. Yeah, there you go. That's exactly what we're looking at there.
Double Diamond.
That's got some extra lines going on there too. So I see more credits, but yeah. So like, that's a great example.
Yeah. But the older Double Diamond, to clarify, do you think that it actually has a higher payout percentage?
Yep. Yeah, and that's something that I should also note. Like, manufacturers do. I see a question coming that I can't wait to answer. Yeah. So when it comes to remakes, sometimes the remake doesn't have the same payout choices as the original. So you might see the exact same game in a newer cabinet, newer graphics, but doesn't mean it plays exactly in terms of payout like the old one. So that's something to keep in mind as well. Those older machines are definitely ones to check out if you're really trying to stretch your money.
Yes, and also I did realize that whenever I can definitely take screenshots of this and send it to you later. It's like when I play in that Jade Monkey, the payout percentages on my blue board ranges from 93% to 96%. The Martin Fire Party around the same, like actually goes down to 92%.
Yep.
Then when I put in Roman in Egypt, it goes from like 83 to 96%, and you can definitely see that drop.
Correct. And there's a couple of reasons why that happened. Unfortunately, I haven't been able to get anybody to say it on the record, but it just came to how casinos sort of started requesting differences in that range. And there's a book or two out there that sort of hints at it, but nothing that I can point to that can say that's the reason. So
yes. After this stream, I'm sending you a bunch of screenshots of my blue board, and also Slotmo says that dual screen blue board.
Great. No, I'd love to see him.
Yes. Also, thank you, Robert Ferguson, for the $2 super chat. Woo!
Awesome.
Yep. And SD guy, up you come. Can you speak on how I very get to with that bleep bonus on that wicked wheel?
So my understanding is that Nevada's regulations did not require that you handled predetermined bonuses differently from true pick bonuses until relatively recently. That's the official answer that I got. And so they basically They built a predetermined bonus. They've now finally admitted on the record there was one. Speaking of bullshit, here's what I didn't like. A slot channel went to G2E, asked them, is this a predetermined bonus? And they responded, it's all luck. That was the exact answer. I was like, how do you give such a weaselly answer? And she didn't press, so that was kind of a bummer. But like what I've been told officially is that the regulations allowed them to do that. The regulations have changed, so at least in Nevada, that doesn't mean it's going to be like this anywhere. If it's a true pick, it can show you the other choices. If it's predetermined, it's not allowed to. And I think that changed in the last year or two. So yeah.
That is so good. Very good for Nevada because on Payline Slot Channel, he did this is what really gets me fired up. And on Payline Slot Channel, he actually was talking about on Wicked Wheel how when you like pick the Predetermined picking stuff, how you pick like 2 grands, and then on the third pick, because it's predetermined, you think you got 2 minis, you got 2 grands, and then you click the grand, then you click the what you think is gonna be the grand, and bam, you get the mini. And when it shows the fake boutique, and then when it shows the fake screen, it actually shows the grand right next to the mini. It actually makes me pretty fired up and pretty mad.
Yeah, I know. I have a friend of mine that was relentlessly taunting another friend when we were on a cruise a couple years ago because I was going to pick that one and you blew my ultra chance on Wicked Wheel. So I'm not sure the answer to that. They could possibly have 2 versions of the software, one that meets Nevada regulations and one that doesn't, right? So they can ship the same crap that they're shipping.
Yeah.
I want to say, I mean, look, there's a reason why the bonus is structured that way, right? You're not going to be able to have a true pick screen with 6 progressives and make it like end in like any reasonable amount of time. I think that's the logic behind it, but like they could have just easily not shown the other options and called it a day. So I don't know what the answer to that is. I don't know if they're going to just do what's going on. What I have also learned, though, is that if a game was already approved under the old regulations, they don't have to go back and fix those games.
Yeah.
So that allows them to avoid having to pull games off the floor that have already been approved. Obviously, if there's a bug, that's a different story. But if it was approved under the rules, they let it go. So old Wicked Wheel is still going to be out there. And then the newer versions are of course, going to have to take this into account.
Good. That's actually really good for Nevada. I really hope that as we continue to speak about this, that we can bring more awareness to this deceptive practice, which really can be dangerous and addictive. Because when you see that, you think, oh my gosh, I was so close to that grand. It actually makes people spend more money and may go beyond the bankroll, which could lead to addiction and many devastating consequences.
So the answer to that is a little more complicated because theoretically every manufacturer could do what they're doing, but I've heard pushback from others saying that they don't agree with that method. So the only manufacturer I've seen a consistent question mark on has been Every. That doesn't mean that others haven't done it, but like when I have conversations with the others, it tends to be a bit more cut and dried. If it's a true pick, it shows the other options, and every time I ask them, they confirm that. So at this point, I don't think the conventional rule needs to be completely thrown out, but I think certainly when you're looking at every game, and like it's bringing questions like Jackpot Jump to my mind, right? Like if you think back a few years, Jackpot Jump is a great example of one where you have the +2 picks and you have the credits and the jackpot jumps and it shows you the others. But like if Every's always been doing that, then like are those true pick or are they not? Like that's my bigger challenge is like now you've set a precedent that makes it much harder for me to when I'm seeing these games, you know?
Definitely. I really got to strongly agree. And also, kind of going off subject for one tiny minute, Kugel's World does bring out that you can low roll on Lotus Flower forever, which is definitely true.
I don't know if I don't remember that one off the top of my head, but I'll definitely check that one out. That I always love examples of those games because people ask me about it all the time, so I'll definitely check that out.
Yes, and Slotmo is asking me, is this like similar to the old Fort Knox?
I don't have a strong enough recollection of how that one worked. I apologize. So I'm not sure how that one revealed or didn't. I'd have to go back and watch some video and double check.
Yes. Yeah, I definitely have checked too. And Slot by Georgie does find out that Iberia makes ATMs. The machines are not set to pay.
So the interesting thing about Every though is they're a little bit more willing to talk about some of their games when it comes to payouts. Whenever I talk to them, they always tell me that the range is within a very specific range as a general rule. And then they're also sometimes hinting at when certain games, like we talked about Lightning's app earlier, have a different payouts sort of range. And so, I think there's pros and cons. to each of these approaches. But yeah, the true pick thing is something that definitely. I mean, I think it's better to follow the conventional wisdom and let players understand how these things work instead of creating confusion that just makes more asterisks on any of these topics. You know, we don't need to have like 3,000 word essays about whether something's real or not.
Yes. That is so true. And that's like so true that I do like that's so true that the more stuff you like start adding to like something, the more confusing it's going to get. And I do feel that I do feel that SD is right that as like people find out that the moment that you do that manufacturers would have to be more clear about the game rules and what the games do.
I mean, I would just be happy if they started putting this stuff more clearly in the pay tables. And to be honest, some of them have started to do so. There's a lot of, and I think some of these are regulations based because the language is way too identical to be coincidental. But like stopping the reels doesn't affect the outcome is now in a lot of Aristocrats pay tables. I've seen it in some of IGTs and so forth. I think there's something that changed that they've now have to list that among other things. Like it would be great if they just said, you know, like your pick doesn't affect the outcome on the non true picks. And I think, because SD, I know, for instance, you used to play Airplane. I don't know if you still do, but, like that game with all the choices, like that's a fun true pick bonus. And so, I think that's like a great example of like a game that would be very different if it was a predetermined pick. And like, think about the Joker's Wild, and that's another every game. And, you kind of get the idea.
Yes. Yeah, I also do know that on Village People Party, that and Jackpot and Super Jackpot Party, that as you pick the presents, that it's actually a true pick because I do know that it's a true pick. Correct me if I'm wrong, because you see the results right after you're done picking.
Well, that's the conventional wisdom. But so if you just think about this stuff a little bit, Joker's Wild has exactly 3 outs. If you ever look at the reveal at the end, there's 3 X's. But I watched 15 different bonuses, and no one ever got past like the 16th or 17th pick. And logically, there should have been one if it was not a predetermined bonus with only 3 outs, where that would have even had happened. Whereas with like, your vacations, your airplanes, your Village People parties, there's like 9 or 10 outs. I don't remember the exact number, but the idea is that the number of outs is much higher, so the bonus could end quickly, or if you get really lucky, you could keep picking around them. And then also they have, in those games, the ability to go back into the bonus, right? The first time you get 3 tries out of 5 to go back in, and then it drops to 1, right? So you can see how the math is structured. You can see how the game was built, and you have to say kind of elegantly to sort of allow for the potential for a really big bonus, but they also have the way for the bonus to end really fast. And so there's a mathematical sort of balance there. 3 outs in a game where there's like 30 cards on the screen doesn't make me feel like that's likely to be a true pick bonus. It just doesn't make any sense to me that that's true, especially seeing so many bonuses end so fast. It just doesn't. I don't think it's the case. But it was also released before the rules apparently changed, so take that for what it will.
Very good things to keep in mind. And I do, and it's like really sucky, like how deceptive some games can be. And I know I kind of can get a little rambly and ranty at times when it comes to deception. But as you guys asking, what is the most underrated advanced placement game and most overrated?
You see, that's the college mindset. You said advanced placement. So AP stands for advantage play, which you probably know, but maybe I think you're just in finals mode right now. So I forgive you. Yeah, no worries. I have nightmares from AP myself.
Every day.
I'll be honest, I've sort of taken a step back from looking at these games because as they've gotten more complex, my original goal was to write about them from the mindset of an average casino player and just learning that not all slots are just pull the handle, outcome appears, right? Things have certainly changed. And there's been games like this that go back quite a ways. There's one in my home casino that's from the early 2000s that has a small sort of banking element to it that if it gets high enough, it can be the machine you want to sit down and play. But the games that are coming out are much more complex. There are people doing some really crazy math on these things, like Hexbreaker 3, and that game is just ridiculous. And I am not going to steal their work because they are putting in the investment and the effort. And at the same time, I feel like that's a step beyond what my goal was. So For me, the most underrated AP games are simply the ones that you can figure out quickly and understand when's the right time to sit down. And so, your Scarabs, your Golden Egypts, all of these types of things, where it's very obvious and understandable. Like the Green Stamps game was one that people loved to talk about back in the day. So, these games have existed for some time, but I think that the other thing that I tend to appreciate is games where you have a better understanding of what your investment's going to be, because the open-ended ones, you could be playing for a very long time before you get that last whatever you need to tip it over the edge, and that could be a harder win or a loss. But I think some people have a higher risk tolerance as well, so it also depends on that aspect of it.
Yes, I also do remember that on Montano you get advantage to play because depending on what bet you can get, it fills up to 2, because depending on what bet you hit, you can see if the last person that with 2 multipliers versus 1 multiplier on the tippy top.
Yep. And the other thing, the reality is that there's more and more of these games coming onto the casino floor. So the thing I just tell everybody in general is pay more attention, understand the game that you're sitting down at. An increasing number of machines are not just pull the slot handle and see if you win or lose, right? It's very different on an increasing percentage of these games, which means you're better off knowing what you're playing before you start playing it.
Yes, definitely. And Slotmo is asking, anybody remember Right Please Believe It or Not?
I can't say I remember that one.
Unfortunately, I don't think I've seen it in my lifetime yet. And SD is estimating that 50% of the new games are advantage play.
Good catch. So what was interesting for me at G2E this year is I didn't see as many of those machines as I was expecting to. I definitely saw them, and they certainly are out there, but I didn't see, like, as a whole, as many as I was expecting. And I think part of the problem is so many manufacturers had so much backed up because of because of all the COVID shutdowns, and the investments were delayed, and new cabinets and new games being released, and they didn't want to release it when casinos weren't buying. So you just saw a lot more going on this year, I think, than normal. And I think that that's tipped the balance a little bit. But I did see some really interesting stuff, like Ainsworth has a game where when a symbol appears, it'll upgrade the payout on certain symbols. And then when you get that lineup, you get the higher pay for that one time, and it resets. And so if you have enough of them built up, it could get very interesting. But so they actually have the pay table right on the screen, so you don't even have to do anything but just look at what's going on. And so I thought that was pretty cool.
Yes, I don't think I've seen that. I don't think I've seen that at G2E, but I have seen I've definitely seen there's a trend every person is literally copying Aristocrat.
That's been happening. That was a very big trend I saw this year. Yeah. If you guys are fans of the Wild Wild games, everybody and their cousin's releasing a version of it at this point. And so one thing that's a true axiom is that if a game is really successful, you're likely going to see 300 clones of it. Every machine's got a Lightning Link component nowadays. Yeah. I think IGT, half their games was blank link, like at their booth. And so I think that unfortunately we're getting a lot of that kind of stuff coming out in the next year for sure.
Yep, I feel like that the casinos are definitely going to have a bunch of clone roles.
Yeah.
Like a bunch of clones is competing with each other. Yep, I know that feeling's not more.
Let the best slot win, right? Like some of them are going to be funner than others, more fun than others. So that's the good news, right? At least we as players get a choice. Hopefully the casinos don't stock up on all of one type of game and are smart enough to have a diversity in their lineup. And the best casinos tend to do exactly that, so they can serve all of us.
Definitely, and we do have two questions from one from T Glip and one from SD Guy. We'll start with T Glip first.
Sure.
And T Glip is 24 is asking Josh, on the bag game, does it matter how filled up the bags are? Oh, it seems like that is not. It seems like it does on that one. I usually know those things are gimmicks.
So there's two parts to my answer. The first is in terms of how full the bags are and whether they're going to hit. No, they're just like any other bag, firework, pot, whatever you see. They're just a visual illustration of how long since the last bonus. It does not predict the future bonus. However, the second version of the game that they call Boost, if the bag gets to a certain point, a boosted bonus will be awarded when the bag ultimately spins. So that means that you'll get an enhanced bonus. Doesn't necessarily mean you're going to win more, but it does. It sort of increases the volatility potential of the bonus. And so if it's been kind of building for a while, and you get a bag that spins with boostlet, you do get a little bit of something extra. It makes for a fun pay table to read, because I think that means that there's like 12 different versions of the bonus now. So my favorite thing to do when I'm writing about these things is I take pictures of the pay tables, and my arm falls asleep on some of these games where the pay table is literally 50 pages long.
Yes.
I don't know how any player is supposed to read this stuff and actually understand what they're reading in a first shot. But unfortunately, as the games get more complex, they have to be very explicit about the rules, and that's what you get.
Yep. And also, the thing that I do wonder about the bags is like, as the bags like fill up, I wonder if it's a program, like no matter how full the bag is, it's programmed to spin at a certain time.
I don't believe that to be the case. Generally speaking, if something's going to happen by a certain point, the manufacturers advertise it as a must hit buy, and they do that for the very simple reason that it's a good marketing gimmick. So if you have a progressive or the free games thing that IGT is doing now, where they must hit by a certain number, they're going to put that somewhere so that way you can see that it's building to a potential point. Because like other games where you build this equity, and this is going to go right into what Gamblers Unknown is asking, they want to make that as visual as possible because they want to draw people into play.
Yes, I can definitely see that. I know on like one Bally's game, it says that the progressive must hit by $1,200.
Right. So Gamblers Unknown. So AP, the term is advantage play. I tend to use a different term because I think it's a bit more blanketed of what's going on. And so there's they call it persistent state games. The idea is that normally the previous outcome of the spin has no relevance to the next spin. But with a persistent state game, there can be something that lingers beyond that, from the last spin. So if you think about a game like Scarab, for instance, you collect those gold frames through the first 9 spins, and then on the 10th spin, all of the gold frames, those spaces will turn wild. So because if you leave the game in the middle of the cycle and there are gold frames left behind, the next player will be able to sit down, put their money in, and pick up where you left off. And so there's different variations on how this can work, but some call them bank games, equity. There's different terms. Every time I talk to people in the manufacturers, they use persistent state games as their kind of core language. So I've sort of picked that up, but there's a few different ways that it's talked about. So yeah.
Yes. I definitely got to like re-listen, definitely got to rewatch this to like really absorb what you're saying, because like you do have so much interesting knowledge, and it's like, and I find it like crazy. Shoot, darn it, the train's really left the station this time, but I find it crazy just how overall complex everything has gotten, and just like the idea of I did hear that there's like some games that it can that's like just like tricks like it looks like it's filling up the medium, but in reality it's like not filling up anything.
Yeah, I mean, with the pay tables being a bit more explicit now. Sometimes they'll say like, the pot doesn't mean anything. So again, if you spend a couple of minutes, you can many times figure out what you really need to be paying attention to. But many times a lot of us just want to sit down and play the game, right? So that's the flip side to it. It's, do you go to the casino to read the pay table, or do you go to play the game, right? So it's a balance. And so, that's why I am appreciative of a lot of the channels out there, because they're putting out videos that help you understand the game to a certain degree. They may not necessarily have read the pay table or even be telling you what's actually going on, but you can see how the game works in practice. And so, I love the channels that take the time to explain the games, but even just watching how they play can certainly help you understand what you're going to get when you sit down.
That's definitely one of my favorite parts about being in this YouTube slot community, is because like you can like watch a video and you can actually figure out what is going on without having like what you said, shift through 50 pages of a pay table, and you can actually see like just how volatile everything is.
Yeah.
And as he's asking, his question is, do you see any new upcoming trends in slots?
So we've started to see this already hit the casino floor, but there's a lot of mixing and matching of mechanics. So like Wild Wild Buffalo is a great example, where they take the Buffalo theme and the way that game works, and they marry it to the Wild Wild series with the prizes, right? So you're seeing a lot of that. one of the things that was sort of interesting was seeing old themes like Haywire, which was an old IGT kind of game back in the day, and they're putting that against a Link game. And the Haywire aspect of it was visually very cool. I mean, it's still a Link game at the end of the day, but it was just fun to see something a little different there. So you're seeing sort of also old brands making a comeback. I saw Da Vinci Diamonds with a Megaways game, which was interesting and an increasing multiplier every time there was a cascade. All sorts of stuff like that. So the trends that I'm seeing are old brands, new games is probably the number one thing. And sequels were always a thing, but like this was overkill this year. I was struggling to find the brand new stuff half the time. And then the other thing too is, and this is an IGT specific thing that I just really love to see, was that they're finally getting the ability to bring like old games back on new equipment and look like the old games. So like Top Dollar and
Yes.
and those types of games. And it looks like the games from 20 years ago, but it's very high tech what's actually going on under the hood. But I just appreciate the attention to detail, because, players who love those games certainly like them acting and feeling a certain way. And some of those ones they were releasing a few years ago were just very, very odd.
Yes. Also, I just raised, but we were talking before the stream started. We were talking earlier about how we wish that, like how we talked about how we wish that more old slot machines would come back to the casino, and I feel like manufacturers are realizing that the new games may not be getting as much attention as the older games that left the flow.
It's really interesting because there are certain companies, and like the old WMS games was a perfect example of that. They were in some cases 10, 15, 20 years old, and they were just letting the games die on the floor, and they weren't doing anything about it. At least now they're trying to do a remake program. Now I see SD's comment, and there's a lot of people who hate the way those new games act, but the fact that they exist at all is a step forward, because most of these machines are just being pulled all together. So their attention to detail is definitely lacking if you're trying to truly remake a game. But the fact that the game exists at all is something anyway. But yeah, I mean, and so they've been working on it, and sometimes they remake them and sometimes they re-envision them, right? Like the Money Burst series sort of started fresh with, Dean Martin's back, but it's a very different game and structure. So, at least appreciate that that brings some diversity back to the floor, right? Different reel styles, different ways to get different bonuses. And so, hopefully they continue down that path a little bit.
I really hope so too. And I really hope that that more older games will come back with like what HT was doing, like reinstating like the old games but new cabinets. And I would love even more Dean Martin bring that all that stuff back. It is so beautiful.
Did we miss a question? I think we had one that we had up on the screen. I don't know if we actually answered it.
All right, let me dig. Oh wait, whoops, slot mo.
Yes, that's the one. So I don't know. So the thing is there's a licensing aspect to this, that a company develops the technology and then companies can license it. I definitely recall reading that someone has, at least one company's licensed the technology, if not more. So I think that means that it can start making its way onto the casino floor. But the development cycles to get a game done and tested in the labs and all of that, and then actually onto a casino floor does take a while. So my guess is that maybe in the next year or two you'll start to see more of these games popping up. But I definitely have seen it online. We got online gaming in Connecticut where I live last month, and there's a couple of Megaways games already up there, and they're definitely among the more interesting ones to play out of the ones that they've launched. So I think that it's probably just a matter of time before more of these come out. And cascading games in general seem to be making a bit of a comeback. Back to SD's question, Every had their first one, and they have a really it's sort of like, if the quick hit ultra pays where you have the rising reel capability, it's like they married that with a cascading game, and it's interesting how that one works, and I'm looking forward to playing that one.
Can you also congratulations, Easy, on your $1,000 on Cayman. Woo! And also, can you explain? And also, can you explain how that cascading and mega reels work for people who are not very familiar with that structure?
Sure. So a normal slot machine will have a set reel size. So let's say, if you're talking about a mechanical reel, it might be, just 3 reels. You might have 5 reels on a video slot. You could have 3 spaces, 3 rows or 4 rows. And so that sort of determines that the size of it. With megaways, each reel can change the number of positions on each reel every single spin, and most of the megaways games I've seen have been 6 reels instead of 5, so you can get into the tens of thousands of ways. And so if you line up the right symbol and stack it straight across, it can just be it could be a massive sort of win. And so it's interesting. I've seen a few different ways that they've sort of done bonuses and stuff like that. So there's not like a universal way that they're presented, but just the idea. Exactly. Yeah. So you can get 100,000 ways and above. So it can get very exciting if you get a really good lineup. I've seen things with multipliers as you get more cascades, because when with a cascade, all the symbols that match up disappear, and then more symbols appear that fall down, and they could match up too, and over, right? So it can get very interesting really quickly on these types of games.
I remember seeing maybe like 1,000 ways to lose.
Yeah, you can also have very many more ways to lose. Exactly.
Yes, I remember seeing like on like some megaways. I believe it was on Trumbo Casino, where there's like something like going on top row, and you could just, and like it was like bejeweled, and I saw like this like combination that kept going off and off and off again, and a person I probably think won $300 by the end of that cascade.
Yep. Absolutely.
Antigua does have a question. How often do you play, and are you a slot scientist?
I'm in the casino at least once a month, but generally more. It really just when I'm at home, I don't go as often because everything in there doesn't change too often, and so I'm looking for something new or interesting to play. They've been investing this year, but last year I could have seen the same games 13 times if I went 13 times, so that's part of it. But I live within driving distance of Atlantic City, so I try to go there once or twice a year. I try to get out to Vegas periodically. I've got friends down in other parts of the East Coast, so I'll drive to see them. So yeah, I mean, I'm in the casino relatively frequently, for sure.
Sweet. I do. And Moses is asking, what's your favorite slot machine company?
Historically, if you asked me this question like 10 years ago, WMS hands down. And it's got, I think Aristocrats gets to win for me right now. I just think that they continue to be very clever with some of the things that they're doing. Not everything is a rehash, although they certainly have their moments with those games. And so I just appreciate, Wild Wild, the bag game, like some of these newer games, are just as exciting and interesting as Buffalo was, 15 years ago. And so I appreciate when they continue to come up with new ideas.
I do have to agree, because like even though Aristocrat can be very volatile, there's like something that screams like very consistent, very extremely consistent about like how the games pay out, and I'm just like how consistent the graphics are from one game to another, so that you can know like what you're looking for.
Yeah, I mean, I wish they would have spent a little more love on Buffalo Link. I think the graphics there definitely are a little underbaked, but for the most part, they tend to also do a very good job with their graphic work.
Yes, that's sorry.
I see a comment in here about Wicked Wheel needing a refresh. I can report that at G2E they were showing off a sequel, so there will be another version, and so that'll be interesting to see what they do with the picking screen.
Yes, and J-Ro does have an interesting comment too. J-Ro says, I have seen many games that have been reset and not hit open, taken out the casino flow because the casinos does not want to pay out. This is what happens with some casinos that close for 2 hours. Now that we open 24/7.
Yeah, I mean, when it comes down to that, the regulations are going to have a lot to do with whether they can do that or not. I've certainly seen markets where if like a machine is decommissioned and the progressive hasn't been paid out, they have to reallocate it somehow. I saw a really interesting example where a casino turned off an old Titanic game that was finally done and the progressive hadn't hit, and that's part of the reason why they left it alone. And so they did a giveaway. So they basically just they did an extra marketing giveaway where people could win extra cash as a way to give out that money. And so, I don't know that all markets have those rules, and certainly there's places that are more regulated than others. So it wouldn't surprise me if that is possible. I've certainly heard examples of cruise ships resetting progressives between excursions or between sailings. So there's always going to be the possibility of people being able to do that within the rules that they have to follow or not follow, as the case may be.
That's like, yeah, I do remember that there's like this one game called the Lion Share at MGM that they had to leave on for 20 years because it took like 20 years for the $2 million progressive to hit.
Right. There's been a few interesting examples of like machines that have just built and built and built and what ends up happening with them. Yeah, certainly within the realm of possibility the way these games are designed. So
definitely. And yeah, it's like really crazy to see like how long a slot machine can last with 24/7 play and usage.
yeah, I mean, we also have to remember that even when the casino is open 24/7, machines do get shut down. They do get worked on. Machines don't sit in the same place forever. They get moved around. Sometimes they get fixed up. But like some of those machines have been sitting on the casino floor. Like where I live, the casinos opened in the mid to late 90s. There are machines from that vintage that are still sitting on that casino floor operating. Certainly less of them because the parts are harder to find now, right? I've heard stories from people who work there that they take some machines off the floor so they can cannibalize parts for the ones that they keep because they're still doing too well to take off the floor. So yeah, that's certainly possible. Jackpot Joe mentions red screens, and I think that's another example of machines that have stood the test of time in certain markets for sure. So,
and also J-Ro does want to add that plus the gaming board will sit on site will not check a payback percentage on a machine if a player asks on site. They will shut the game down. Gaming boards will not find casino. One big monopoly makes me sick.
Yeah, I mean, again, I'm not going to say that I'm so versed in the gaming rules of each of location to know where that can be possible and where that's not. But if it's following the rules, and it's a frustrating exercise, but if it's in bounds, it's in bounds.
Yes, I've never known just how complicated and complex the gaming rules were until tonight. And SweepStakes is asking, how do you feel about video gaming technology or VGT?
So I have never been to Oklahoma, so I've never had the experience of sort of the true red screen experience. The closest thing I got was when I was in California earlier this year. I played my first bingo machines at a casino that had like 25 of them in the corner of the room. No one was playing them. It was not very fun. But like, again, I don't know if that's just a game choice that I made or the fact that there was not enough people playing it, because I know that bingo is a little bit different than a class 3 slot, which is your Vegas slot. So I would say for me, the jury's still out, but I do intend on getting some time in a place where they exist at some point.
I'm definitely interested in playing the red screen slot machines, and I do know that the red screens can definitely be way tighter from what I've heard because they run on like a bingo card. And I do want to know, like, for people who do play red screens, if like the more people who are playing, the looser the machines are, because the bingo game is cycling more. That's like one of my biggest questions.
I mean, the more money in, the more money out is probably accurate, but whether it's looser, it's probably the same payout percentage. It's just more people playing, and bingo is a game where you're playing against other people in terms of that's how it's structured. So I guess that would be accurate. As I said, I haven't had enough personal exposure to it, but I also have read in certain markets that have bingo machines that their payout percentages, the ones that talk about it publicly, can be favorable compared to a regular Vegas style slot. But that is up to every casino and up to what they're willing to talk about. So some that are being looser will use it as a marketing opportunity, where those that aren't will probably keep their mouth shut.
Yeah. And also, I do wonder, on that note, what is your feelings about casinos that advertise that say we have loose slots, 90% payouts on slot machines? What's your feelings about that kind of marketing?
I'm fine with any marketing that helps people understand that there's an opportunity, but you need to understand what the marketing's telling you, right? So if you see a bank of machines that say up to 98%, that doesn't mean that every machine in that bank is going to pay you 98%. There's probably one out of whatever number there's there that will pay that, and the rest are much lower. And so, you need to read the fine print, or read exactly what they're telling you, and make sure you don't presume more than it's telling you. There was once a bank of machines in Park MGM, formerly Monte Carlo, that was an IGT bank that said, it had the number and it didn't say up to. And so you could at least reasonably understand that the games that were there were paying in that range. So it's I don't mind loose slots marketing. I love that El Cortez loves to stick it to the strip and say we're like 37% or 43%, whatever number they have at the time, better than the strip. But, you just you need to understand what that means, right? And so if you know what the strip data is, at least you can do the math.
Yes. And I do hear that on the strip, that is like the absolute tightest machines you can find.
Yeah, I mean, well, except that like downtown crossed past the strip for a number of months after around the time Circa opened, and so it makes you wonder if what was pulling the average up for downtown, and like did Circa pull the average down? Did other people make changes? Nevada is a market where you don't know every single casino's payout. You know the average for an area, and so when something big changes, you can try to monitor before and after. But for a while, some of the strips percentages were doing better than during than the downtown. So that's that axiom that downtown's a better value. You just need to be careful because that's not always necessarily the case. And actually, if anybody reads VegasAdvantage.com, I know we're sliding from slots for a second, but the gentleman who does the blackjack surveys and other table game surveys wrote about 3 horrible downtown blackjack games. And like an example of, they say it's 3-2 blackjack, but they have a mandatory side bet that drives your house advantage way up. And so, caveat emptor, right? You need to understand what you're actually playing.
I do want to know, how does a side bet drive the house advantage up really high, because I'm very unfamiliar with blackjack.
So you have your hand bet, your regular bet, like let's say $5 a hand, whatever you're going to bet. Side bets usually are optional, so you can bet like $1 or $5 progressive or whatever, and there's a different pay table for that wager. So in the case of these mandatory side bets, you're forced to bet money on that side bet, and the percentage you get paid back over time, and that's much worse than the blackjack game. And so it brings the whole game's average down because you're being forced to make an additional wager. And it looks cheap, it's $1, but that dollar is every bet, and it just adds up over time, right? So that's the challenge. And so and plus you don't necessarily know what that side bet's necessarily doing for you, good or bad. And so you also, it's just harder to know what your outcome is. With blackjack, with video poker, with certain games where cards are involved, or dice, or roulette, you can calculate your odds of winning or losing because there's a finite number of cards, there's a finite number of spaces on the roulette wheel. With a slot machine, with certain types of bets, you don't necessarily know what your true odds are.
Yep, I can definitely see that, and I find like it's just kind of that I had, but I find like that the more stuff you start adding to the blackjack, the more complex it gets, and the more complex it gets, the more ways you can just the more ways that the casino can just confuse you and take your money.
Right. Sure. Let me see what I can do. Yeah, exactly, Penny. That's exactly right. Where they make you have to bet it, like instead of it being a choice. That's when it gets dicey because you don't have control over that anymore. So basically, a slot is built with a predetermined number of outcomes overall. So it could be it can be done in various ways. So like it's the number of real stops, or it can be like the number of positions, and there's a number of combinations that can happen. This is just one example of how it can be done. There's a few ways this can work. And so then based on that, the math can tell you, like basically out of every $100 on average, what percentage will be paid out. So let's just say it's 95% will be paid back to the player. That would be a 95% return to player over time, and a 5% hold, which is the casino's what they would keep over time. Now we know that it's not clean like that, right? It's not like you put $1 in, you get 95 cents. You put $1 in, that would be very boring, right? So there's ups and downs. And so the whole idea behind this is it's an over time thing. And with math, with statistics, as you have more and more outcomes, you slowly approach on the expected number that should happen. And so some games are designed, to hit that within 100,000 spins on average within some level of variance. Some really tough games with a lot of volatility could be into the millions. And so basically they're counting on a certain amount of play happening over time to smooth out the ups and downs. That's why when you hear about casino offers and you hear them say that time on machine matters, it's because the casino would rather a player playing $1 spin and lose $500 than someone doing a $500 bet on roulette, red or black, losing it and walking away. They love the first one more so than the second because they have more shots at your money over time. Yes. And the math tells you the more shots at your money over time, the casino is going to win more.
Yes. Oh yeah, and now when I think about it, that person who puts $500 on roulette, and if they win, they could potentially double and triple the money like crazy. Versus that person who puts $1 down the slot machine and just loses it.
Right. I mean, we've all played slots where you can spin, you could $20 and not get really anything of value, right? And most people, they'll put more than 20 to a slot, frankly, so that way they can ride that out. But the ups and downs over time, it's designed to ultimately in the casino's favor. We just need to remember that every time we're in a casino. The casino has set this up to be a business for themselves to win very easily.
They say, they say, like, I will believe it was in this book called Addiction by Design, where it's kind of hard to explain, but they say pretend that this is kind of like a ball graph. If slot machines were that, it's like a really it's kind of like a roller coaster, but it's like very, very smooth right down to zero.
Yeah, you have your ups and downs, but eventually you do reach back to ground level. So that's a pretty good analogy.
I've definitely seen that recently on my Dean Martin Royal Party, where I was like playing, and all of a sudden, like I was like down to $1, all of a sudden back up to $20, and then I just kept kind of tinkling down, boom, up to $20, and within a few hours, I zeroed out, and kabam, I ended up going back to cleaning my room out.
So Slotmole has a comment right below is the other one there about games with a higher hold. So this is something interesting that I've learned. This can depend, and so different designers of slot machines can design games in different ways. And so some will start with the lowest hold and design a game that they feel is balanced, and then they'll layer on the higher hold with more of what people would like out of the game. And so that would certainly sort of lend some credence to that example. But then some will start with the most likely payback percentage that'll be set on. And so with a standard game, it might be slightly higher than a licensed game. There's some debate on that when I talk to people about how that works, but they'll offer the same ranges, but casinos will tend to lean a little lower. Which I think makes sense when you think about licensed games versus sort of bought games. But then they'll adjust it. They'll make adjustments to, but they don't want the game to be awful. So part of the thing that I also like, people talk about, because certain markets unregulated, the games pay 50%. Do you know how bad that game would be? Do you know how awful it would be to play when if every $100 you put in, you lost half your money? So I think there's going to be a lower floor where the games stop being fun. And so, there are slot manufacturers that refuse to go below a certain number. And that number, as they've said, has changed over time. But, they are still trying to make sure the games are fun. Because let's say you play a Dancing Drums that's awful. And maybe that was a 70%. I'm just making up a number, right?
Yeah.
You're going to remember that, and you're going to hate every Dancing Drums you ever see, regardless of whether that was a one-off or whatever, right? So the manufacturers also don't want to build a game that you're not going to have fun on, and so they're going to protect their designs to some degree to make sure that it's not messed up by the casino. So that's just something to keep in mind there too. I've been routed in casinos that promise like paybacks above 90% on a consistent basis, and I've won considerably in casinos that are supposedly lousy plays. So it just really depends on the scenario.
Oh yeah, and also remember this, but they say if an entire casino has like the worst payouts like ever, what happens is like people will not go back to that casino. People will just like get up and leave, say, "Yo, that's a terrible casino. I'm not going back." And also, I really do like the point about how casinos, how manufacturers do not want to ruin their brands. Also, what comment did you see?
What was that? What was that question? I'm sorry.
Yes. Sorry, what comment in the chat did you see?
Oh, Jackpot Joe said, "How do I feel about rock, paper, scissors?" Clark hated. I prefer pick a number over rock, paper, scissors. I just watched that clip the other day. That's a great clip. Yeah, no, you go, for those who haven't seen Vegas Vacation, he goes into this casino with the most unusual games, and just it's what's hilarious is like Wars was in there, and of course Casino War is a game, so it kind of came true in some cases. Yeah, Slotmo, that's probably about right. It certainly depends on markets. Some more competitive markets, you sometimes see some higher numbers. Sometimes you see lower numbers. What's interesting for me, like New York's a great example of something that's sort of weird, but yet potentially beneficial. Some casinos are run by the lottery, so they're not real slots. They're basically scratch-offs in the form of a slot machine. But every single machine in the property has to pay above 90%. And if you look at most of the paybacks in AC or in Connecticut or other places, where reporting is listed, not under 90% is very common for penny machines. So the penny machines, even though they're not real penny machines, will pay back over time better at the New York lottery terminals than in a regular style slot machine. And so I've actually played in some of those before, and I feel like you can feel the difference. There's studies that tell us that we can or cannot feel the difference, and they disagree, but I think many of us can tell when games are getting harder. I think that's very clear over time.
Yes. And also remember a really clear example of this is cat hats and bats. Oh, hold on to your hat, because I remember when you were first put on, just like bam, 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 you could like literally like you can like literally get the bonus really easily from what I've heard. But as over time, the machines kind of increase their hold, whoop, and it's like really hard to get the bonus on it now.
So that the payback percentage, once it's set, unless the casino changes it. So the machine itself is not auto calibrating with more or less bonuses. It's just the same percentage of the time a bonus can happen. So this leads right into Linley's question, and I have a really interesting answer for you. Do I think it bonuses a lot more? I don't think it bonuses a lot more, but actually something I will caution people is that progressives build over time. And so if you look at the data for a new casino, their payback usually starts 1 to 2% lower than they end up because the progressives haven't had a chance to build. And usually most progressives have like a 2% on average, sometimes 3, sometimes 1, sort of that's percentage of your wager goes into it. And so if you hit a progressive on day one and it's $10,001 versus when that progressive is built to $13,000, that is going to have an impact on the overall payback over time. And so you do see this interesting thing where new machines technically are paying a little bit less because their progressives haven't had a chance to build up yet. But people love playing new machines, so they don't kind of care. They'll eat that potential to have a chance at a shot at a new game.
I not realized that math. Because like I always thought that the moment that a new machine went onto the floor, that it would like start paying out start really paying out just like how Buffalo Link did at the Cosmo when they first put it on the floor.
Yeah, I mean, I think the energy is around new games. I think people see people winning because they're paying attention to the new games, and so I think that there's a sort of a cognitive bias of sorts where we're watching these games and we're excited about these games and they're not getting off the machine and we want to play. Look, they're getting a bonus, right? We remember those types of things, but no, I don't. Casinos have no reason to give you more bonuses at the beginning because people want to play the new machines. If anything, I would expect them to want to make them pay a little worse because that's their best shot at getting money out of people at the beginning. But the reality is most of them just set it and forget it.
Yep. Is it click, buy, lose all your money?
Yeah, and Lindley, the other thing to remember, again, I don't know if you were here at the beginning of the conversation, but newer games tend to be harder games than older games as a general rule. So you're just going to have the situation that they're going to pay less often, but when they do, they're going to pay better, right? So like the 25 times bonus that was standard on a slot machine 10 or 15 years ago is just not the general rule that they build it to today. So, that's the side. People want these harder games because they want bigger bonuses, but that means there's going to be more losers and less winners to make that happen.
Definitely. And I'm also really wondering about what are your thoughts about the casinos getting rid of all the old slot machines?
I understand why it's happening, but it's still a disappointment because, I think, one thing that was learned in the pandemic was that they don't need as many machines active to make this work. Like many casinos turned off half or more of their machines. They weren't losing half of their revenue. And so many of them tried to figure out, well, what happened. And what they realized is that if they put less popular games or more popular games, take out some of the old machines that weren't getting played as often, they can still do fine. And so you're seeing sort of this removal of machines that's also going along with the airing out of the casino floor, which was already starting to happen before the pandemic, accelerated after the pandemic closures. And so you're just seeing sort of like one of my home casinos, they've probably ripped out half of the old machines on one side. They have like two sides, and they've been sort of basically doing, full like section replacements, like with less machines, but the machines that are being put in are getting played a lot more. So clearly there's a value to them if they're continuing to do it.
Yes. And I also remember when I went into New York and Las Vegas in 2019, I remember seeing that they had like 2 double, triple diamond deluxe with cheese. And next thing I know, I got on that in 2021. Poof, they're gone.
Yeah, I was looking for that one myself. I thought it moved, but I could be wrong. They did move some of their real machines around, but I didn't spend as much time there as normal, so I don't remember if that's the right casino I'm thinking of.
Yes. And also, Jackpot Joe does point out that many of the old slot machines are still in Black Hawk, Colorado.
Yeah, there's still some markets that are really good about maintaining a good mix. So that's always going to be great for players who like them. And even when you're talking the Vegas area, there's some casinos that have been more aggressive at replacing machines than others. So you can still find it. Like there's a set of machines at Mandalay Bay near the cashier. That's the Jade Monkey you mentioned. It's got like Brazilian Beauty. It's got Village People Party. It's got all these old machines that I literally spend like an hour and a half or 2 hours over there, like a couple times during my trip each time I'm there. As long as those machines are there, I'll certainly play them.
Yes. And Slotmo is asking, Why don't manufacturers allow old software games in new hardware?
My best guess is just compatibility, the amount of time and energy and cost to convert these games to newer hardware and the demand for that at a given time. I, certification of a new game can be a five-figure investment alone, and that it's if you get it through on the first try. So anytime you make changes, it's got to go through another verification process. And so, I think that's why you saw them wait as long as they could before doing remakes in certain manufacturers' cases. It's just, when the investment finally made sense because they have casinos that are demanding these games because they don't want to remove them from the floor, but the machines are just too old.
Yes. Yeah, it's definitely sad seeing old slot machines deteriorating. And I've noticed a really huge decrease of WMS blue boats within the last few months of my 21-year-old existence.
Yes. No, that's true. There are some casinos though. What's interesting is like Maryland Live is a great example of a casino I went to that had a ton of those machines, but they opened in 2012. So they got them at the very end of the life cycle of those machines. So their machines were less than 10 years old versus other casinos where they might be 15 or 20 years old. So they're able to keep them up to speed right now. So, in that case, I've gone there and played games that I haven't seen anywhere in years. And so that for me is kind of a fun stop when I'm, traversing the East Coast. I'll try to pop in there if I can. But that's more of an exception to the rule. Theoretically, these casinos could buy refurbished machines exactly slot mold. They lack of parts, or
Yep.
and so some casinos will cannibalize some machines to use the parts for others. But it is a difficult thing. Like the Cosmos promise that they'll keep Ruby Slippers running as long as they can, but eventually there will be a point where if they can't find the parts and keep the machine running, they're not going to have a choice.
That would definitely be a heartbreaking day. And I can think about, especially for like the old double diamonds, that there will be a point where none of them exist in the casino, just like the old Mills slot machine from the 1960s.
It will eventually happen. There will be a point
Um,
when it just, they get taken off the floor. It's just a question of when.
Yeah, it's kind of scary to think about the win, but Jackpot Joe Slots does have a question. Have you ever seen the Mint Gaming Hall in Kentucky? Weird machines.
So my recollection for Kentucky is that's probably historic horse racing, which is another type of game that's out there. It's similar to bingo in that the outcome isn't determined inside the machine, but through a different game altogether that's handled outside the machine. In this case, it's old horse races. I know that they're popping up more and more. Virginia it's sort of started building out some, although now they're going to get real casinos, so we'll see what happens with that. But it's sort of another loophole to take advantage of legal options where other legal options are not available. So like bingo, because tribes were allowed to do that because that didn't require a compact relative to Vegas style slots. And so the same thing with historic racing machines, trying to sort of prop up racetracks that have approval to do historic race betting, but not slots.
That is a really smart idea. There's like a really smart idea, and I don't think I've ever played a historical racing machine. But if I do go to Kentucky, I gotta give that one a try.
Yeah, I'm curious to check them out. Now the big manufacturers are getting involved, and so I know Ainsworth has been pushing hard, for instance, and so forth. So AGS has definitely been getting in there. So you'll definitely see more games that people recognize over time, just in that format.
Yes, all I can envision right now is a Dragon Link bonus based off historical horse racing.
So what's interesting though is some games are better suited for that than others. So I'll give you a great example. A friend of mine is a very big gambler at those New York Lottery casinos. She loves Ultimate Firelink as well. But Ultimate Firelink on a game where you have a predetermined number of winners and losers with the scratch off format makes it much harder to make the Firelink bonuses unique. She got 3 bonuses in a single evening with the exact same payout with the balls in the exact same place. And so you start to notice these patterns because it's much harder to do the types of really insane math that these link games and so forth do. And so you'll see some titles that are better fit for this format than others. Yeah, that looks right to me as well, for sure. So yeah, the games they're going to select games that will play well. They don't want to ruin it for people who like a certain type of game. So they want to make sure if you play it at a historic horse racing facility, it'll feel similar to playing it in Vegas, right? So if it won't, then they might avoid that one.
Yes, I still find it mind-boggling that she got the exact same bonus 3 times based off a horse race.
Right.
And sorry if I totally butchered your name, but Natasha Joseph is asking, are casinos randomly audited by gaming or gambling commissions?
I don't know the specific rules of each market to be able to give a good answer for that, but they have to keep a lot of paperwork. Like the stories of what happens in Nevada, for instance, are pretty commonplace stories that you hear in terms of when they make changes, they have to have it documented at least. So I think the answer is probably yes, but like I don't want to. I'm qualifying that I haven't looked at the regulations of each state to say that that's the case. And remember, not every casino is in a state where there's a specific set of regulations necessarily, because it might be bingo machines that are much more loosely defined than say what a slot machine has to be.
Yes. And also, T Clip is asking, can you talk about when bonus wins values are determined at the moment of hitting the bonus or throughout the bonus play?
Yes. So the answer is there's no one right answer. Basically, the difference between predetermined bonuses and a true pick, or predetermined bonuses and a random number generator, say free spins, really depends on the way the game is designed. In practice, it should theoretically not matter because both are going to drive to that overall payback we talked about earlier, right? But I think people like to feel like they're in control when they're picking. I think people like to feel like, the game can go any which way with the RNG. My general understanding is for most free spin bonuses, it leans on the RNG just like a base spin. And so every time the next spin is called, it goes to the RNG just like when you hit spin on the base game. But could they have a predetermined free spin bonus? That's certainly a possibility. And it's definitely a possibility when you're not playing real slots, when you're playing those bingo slots or playing those historic horse racing slots, right? Because the outcome is coming from a different source altogether. So it could be either or. It really depends on the game design. You don't really have a way of truly knowing in most cases what's actually going on under the hood. And we talked about sort of the predetermined issue earlier and how that created some question marks now, right? So that's why I'm saying it the way I am. It's going to be one of those two. One thing we didn't even talk about is like there are slot machine variations where most people think real. Okay, it looks at the reals and I get paid that. There's something called prize first, which means that it's the RNG selects a prize and then shows you a set of reals based on that prize. So that's some manufacturers that have an outside determination system like bingo can use that model to bring a game into like a Vegas style slot quickly, but the regulations haven't caught up to accept it. So you'll also notice that some of their games may not always be available in every place if the regulations don't support that type of a model, unless they rebuild it with reels first, which sometimes they do.
Yes. I've also noticed, and speaking and going off to your subject about prize first, is on Demon's Wild Party. I get this impression that you get to pick like one of, when you start the bonus, you get like 5 microphones to pick from, and you choose a microphone, and that will reveals your symbol.
Yep. I think that game's been around long enough. I'm pretty sure that's a true pick setup.
Yeah.
Because there's more small symbols than large symbols, so and then you still have to line it up. So yeah.
Yes, and also adding on to that, I realized that it feels like no matter what symbol you pick, even if it's small, big, I feel that it is prize first because you can like pick a demon head and you can just only get like one wild lineup, but you can pick like a tiny little music note. You can get like wild and get the same payout. That's like my suspicion of that game.
Yeah, I mean, I'm gonna not speculate on a specific game because I don't know. But I would think that the reels are stacked. Like sometimes they'll even say like depending on what your wager is or depending on what your situation is, there may be different reels for the bonus and stuff like that. You'll sometimes see, I can't remember the language off the top of my head suddenly right now, but it'll tell you that it's bonus reels or something like that. It'll tell you that the reels are different. So there is some visualization that also goes on to indicate when there's some changes afoot.
Yes, and also Jackpotter is asking. Ask Sam Rothstein how he feels about the Gaming Commission.
The name should look familiar to me, but I can't say it's ringing a bell off the top of my head.
Same. Unfortunately, I don't know the name either.
I've made it a point for this interview not to pull anything up on my computer. So if I don't know, I'm just being honest, and I could always look this stuff up, but I'd rather be present for the conversation.
Oh, thank you.
Moses Death. If I'm hungry, I eat because being angry and hungry on the casino floor is not a good mix. They'll still be there waiting to take my money after I'm done eating. So and especially because of the way that flights work from here to Nevada, there's usually bad timing or layovers or whatever the case may be. My next trip to Vegas is coming up in about like a month and a half, and I've already plotted my first meal when I land. So I will start with food.
Yum yum. And I do feel that when you're hungry, you have a tendency to make really bad decisions way quicker.
Yeah, I mean, like, you're not playing at 100%. Like it's like being like completely trashed and playing and stuff
Yeah.
like that.
And also, hey parents, thank you so much for being here. And also, Slotmo is wondering, is does stopping the real positions play an important role?
Yeah, so the real stop is a definition for like each space on the reel, and so when slots are designed, they might put certain symbols more heavy on one reel than another, so you feel like you're almost got to win and stuff like that. That's pretty common practice, but with virtual reels on computerized slots, those reels can be longer than anything. So it just and then there's also weighting of reel stops, right? Like one position could get hit more often than another, so there's all sorts of things that can go on with the math. But yeah, prize first is not that case, because prize first, it's just going to show a win or a loss based on what the prize should be. But again, there's like if you have $1 win, there might be 3,000 different ones that they can show you, so you won't see the same one over and over. So that's how they make it happen. So just a different way to design the game.
Definitely. And also, and especially on double diamond, they like weight the wheel kind of bait dice with the blank space underneath double diamond and the blank space on top of double diamond. So kaboom, that double diamond hits you like a ton of bricks.
Right. So probability never changes because it's the same chances of any particular spin coming up. What it does is it just moves you on to your next outcome faster. And so what I always tell people is you're going to have more winning and more losing spins, because you're just going to have more spins, right? But that just, every wager is against the house edge. The casinos will love you because you're doing more wagers that can potentially be losing wagers, but it doesn't change the probability of anything.
Really good to be nimble, because it's that's like really good to be nimble. Because like also in addition to fast tapping, it can kind of alter your timing a little bit for the random number generator, but at the same time you're going through money way faster.
And what I always tell people is you're altering your timing, but you don't know if you made your timing better or worse, right? Because you don't know what that other spin was that you would have had instead. And so we can certainly say it changes your timing, and that's totally accurate, but you don't know what the outcome of that is. You could have gone from $100 bonus to $1 line hit by your change of timing. So as I said, it's really just how you want to play. If you're going to fast play, maybe lower your wager, so you're putting the same amount of money through, just with more outcomes. You can adjust your approach. I love this question because I know the answer. So Firelink and many, in fact, of the Link games, I don't know. There may be examples I don't know of, but Firelink's definitely an RNG bonus. So the designer of the game confirmed that, when you hit the button, that's what balls, if any, will land for that spin. And if you notice that there's weighting to, like, the bottom row is the easiest to fill up, and you almost always can fill that up. And it's almost like a sign your bonus is almost over if you fill it up. And then it just gets progressively harder over the course of the 8 stacked reels to fill more in. So yeah, it's definitely an RNG based bonus. Lightning Link has a math model that you can actually sort of understand if you watch enough videos of how people got the grand and so forth. I've written a few posts about that. But it is there's a math model behind how you can get the grand or not. And you can see it play out in these bonuses. So yeah.
Yeah, also for the Dragon Link math model, I'm like wondering when you're roll riding by the drag, like I'm like wondering how can you tell when somebody is about to how somebody is going to get the grand on Dragon Link just by looking at the math model and the way that the balls are stacked.
So the thing that you watch is that if you ever watch a Lightning Link, a Dragon Link, a Dollar Storm, there's always one space that seems like have nothing in it. It doesn't have nothing in it. It has one real space out of however long that reel is for the Lightning Link, or maybe a little bit more if you're betting higher, right? Because it does adjust based on your bet level. And so when you watch people, like, there are a couple of video examples of the grand actually being hit. You can see when that space gets filled, they've taken the hardest space out of contention. You still got to get the rest, right? And we've certainly seen examples where you only get 6 balls and you don't get anything else, even though there's balls flying everywhere. But if you can get the other 14, that you're getting that grand. And so what it means is you've got a ton better chance once that one spot is filled. And so Ross Bybee's got a great example of a grand where he landed it, and then another example where he got the hard space but did not get the grand. And so there's some visual evidence that's out there on the Slut channels. This is why I said sometimes I watch what the channels are doing, because they have video that can inform what's going on if you're paying close enough attention. So that's how you can sort of see how it plays out. And so the nice thing is that these videos do exist and you can actually see it in action.
Yes, I'm curious. What is the hot spot? What is the hot spot on Dragon Link? So that we
It
can,
moves.
so that we
It's
can
not
know.
it's not the same space and in fact it moves within the bonus. So like you'll see it like in space number 1 and then suddenly it's in space number 10. So there's always, if you haven't hit it, there's always one space where there's almost nothing going by. And so you'll if you play and you just watch the bonus, you'll see what I'm talking about.
Yes, I would definitely watch that bonus a few times. And I'm curious, but what were you saying about the bottom row? What happens when you fill up that bottom row?
So with Firelink, that bottom row of fireballs is the easiest ones to land. Basically, those will be the ones you can get most readily. If you start the bonus with nothing in the bottom row, the chances are you'll get a few of those and it'll help start unlocking. You know what I mean? So, but one project that I want to do, and this is where I get a little bit crazy, is I actually want to watch a set number of Firelink bonuses, see where all the balls land, and see if there's something more sort of specific than what I'm describing here. So that's a project I've had on my list for a while, but it's just very time consuming. So it's one of those things I got to sit down and play with it at some certain point.
Yes, I think about watching videos or going in the actual casino for that project.
Yeah, well, I mean, the good news is I don't really need to go into the casino for that project because I can literally watch hundreds and hundreds of Firelink bonuses on various slot channels and just start documenting how their outcomes go.
I'd be interested if you let me know if you need help. I'd be interested in helping out at some point.
Sure, we can talk about it. Absolutely.
And also, Gambles Unknown is saying I've heard 11% chance if you see that last ball, it won't land.
Yeah, so if the last space is that difficult one, I've seen multiple examples of it flying by. Again, it's not an easy one to get. If that one's been landed already and you just have a regular one left, I don't know what the exact chances are, but it's certainly a lot higher. So it's just going to be very different.
Yes. How can you tell, like based on the animation, what spot is going to be the hard spot to win?
It's the one where you're seeing almost nothing going by.
Oof. Really good to know. And also, Slotmo is asking, why are we seeing such high bets on the new slots? Like 188 Dow spins? Seriously?
So I can only venture a guess that because casinos are putting less machines on the floor and multi-denomination has taken off, it allows them to have a low limit and a high limit game on the same machine and have less machines needed as a result of it. It doesn't mean that they're going to take out high limit rooms or anything like that, but it just means that there's more machines for those high limit players to be able to enjoy. I don't think that they're expecting the average player to bet $188 a spin, but they do have people who will go into the high limit room and do $100 wheel, and stuff like that. And so it services those players as well. Now, for me, if I was a high limit player, I'm not sure I'd want to be sitting in a floor where a bunch of people around me are betting 40 cents and I'm betting $188. I feel like that's not a comfortable situation. That's why high limit rooms exist to begin with. But, theoretically, I guess it's so that way they can cover all the bases.
Sweet. And also, if you don't mind me asking, it's okay if you say no, but what could possibly make a player feel uncomfortable betting $188 spins when everybody else is betting lower denominations?
So because people can see you have that kind of money, there's been stories of people getting begged at the casino. It's happened to me when I had a $30 ticket and someone asked me for, hey, I see you have $30. Can I have 10 of that? People are very bold in certain markets. There have been examples of people who see people with a lot of money getting hand pays and then following them out of the casino, right? So there is a little bit of that aspect of things, and so that may explain to some degree, right? I can't get into the head of every slot player. Some may not care, but there's certainly, you're putting on a show if you're betting that kind of money in the middle of a basic slot floor.
Yes. Yeah, and I have definitely heard scary stories of people getting robbed out of $5,000 on the way home from the casino.
Yeah, unfortunately, there's been some stories about this. It's a minuscule percentage of the people who go to a casino, but it's certainly happened. I've also got stories like I had an escort try to pick me up literally when the first night I was in Las Vegas, and that was an interesting experience. So there's all sorts of stories like this stuff, but it's just you just got to be careful in general. And so
definitely, I definitely do hear a lot of crazy stories, and then they does also popping in with I think if we see a mini, minor, and major go by, it will never hit.
Yeah, I mean, it depends. Like, if you're betting $5 a spin on Lightning Link and pennies, and the mini is 2x your bet, you should probably be seeing those fly by all the time, right? Because it's not a hard number to show up at that point. So it also depends on the game and what the variation compared to your bet is, or the multiple compared to your bet is, rather.
Yes, I've also seen people betting like higher, and they keep getting like the $600 major versus the 25,000, no, not 25, but $250, $500 minor. I've seen that happen a lot.
Yep. Yeah, Penny, it's a real shame to hear these stories. It's just also a very good reminder, and I've seen people who don't wear this. If you do win big at a casino, you can request security to bring you out to your car just as a safety precaution. Definitely take advantage of these things if it happens, because you just want to take care of yourself.
You do, and it's definitely a very scary reminder of what could happen.
Yeah, just like any other public place, you just want to take care of yourself a little bit. It's always a good idea.
You do. Also, since it's getting pretty late, I do wonder, does anybody have any questions? Or is there anything that you wish that we talked about?
I really appreciate all the questions that everybody's contributed today. It's some really good stuff, and it's been fun to talk with all of you about it.
It really was. And for our final question, for a very final question for you, do you have when we got a pretty interesting question. Is if you win big, can they give you a check or wire you the money?
I don't know about wiring, but I definitely have seen many, many examples of people getting a check. So yeah, that's stuff you should, if you're winning big enough amount. I also think from a discipline perspective, it's a great idea if you don't want to have, if you don't trust yourself, or if you just want to protect the money, you can definitely ask for a check. Even if you do an online deposit is going to take time to get into your bank accounts, right? So I just think it's a good practice in general. I've never had a hand pay that's warranted a check, but I certainly hope to someday, for sure.
Definitely, and I really wish you a ton of good luck. And Gambles Anonymous is asking if you'd like to join his Facebook group called The Major Chasers.
Absolutely. I'll definitely look that up for sure. And because it would be bad form if I didn't at least self-promote once during the live. My website is knowyourslots.com. I put a new post up at 10 a.m. Eastern every single day. I just celebrated 2.5 years on Wednesday, so that was kind of exciting. And I also have Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. All Know Your Slots is the handle. So feel free to follow along and definitely chat. It's always a pleasure.
It is a really fun group. And I really enjoy reading through your website today. So for my favorite article, it's like the article about slot machine bugs and errors, and the time that you got a $5 hand pay. That's been one of my favorite articles so far.
Oh, those are fun. It's always fun that you got a hand pay, but it's like 32 cents or whatever.
Yep. That always happens on my IHC game team. Where if I hit the button just right, boom, hand pay.
There you go. It's always good to get a hand pay, right?
It is, even for 31 cents.
It's something. You won something.
It is. And also, before we go, I'm curious, what has been your favorite part about the slot community?
I mean, I've been watching channels for so long at this point. It was really cool to see SD in here tonight. SD was one of the first channels I started watching when I started watching. I was definitely around for the early days of him and Diana and Deep Proxima and some of the others that were sort of the first wave, and obviously I've been continuing to watch to this day. And the thing that I think is the most sort of promising thing is that it's taken something that was seen as antisocial and made it more social. So many people would go to the casino, they wouldn't tell their friends, they wouldn't tell their family. It was something to be ashamed of. There's certainly things you got to be careful about, right? Like gambling certainly has its risks, but one thing that I've actually found is as I've been more interactive in the community. Oh my God, the Seamus. I'm so sorry. I forgot the Seamus.
Yes.
Yes. When it comes to the community, I actually find myself playing less when I'm with people because I'm chatting more, we're doing things, we're having a long dinner, so it actually sort of regulates the gambling a little bit because I'm also being social with everybody. So not only do I get to make friends and have sort of a community that I get to see. Speaking of community, Helen has a podcast, and I'm going to be her guest on Wednesday. So definitely want to check that out. Assorted Conversations. But yeah, so that's been the most exciting thing for me is we now have this community. We can share knowledge. We can hang out. We can go to casinos together. And I've made so many friends that I would not have made without the slot community.
I've really got to agree with you. That's been what you said really does encapsulate my favorite parts of the slot community. It has just been like so much fun getting to know everybody, and it's like I really do agree that slot machines, once a very solitary, isolating experience, is now just like a really social experience. Like even if you're watching the live stream, you're chatting with everybody, and you just feel like you're really part of the casino right now. It's like the best feeling on earth. Also, Helen, I'm curious, what is the name of your podcast?
Oh yeah, Helen, let's get a plug in there. So Helen does a great job with the podcast, and we got I guess they're almost 20 episodes in at this point, and the diversity of topics is amazing. So that's definitely another fun one to listen to, and they're doing a great job with that.
Yes, I got to check out your podcast, and I'm excited for your episode to air. Awesome. Also, I do want to thank everybody for all your kind words. We had an absolute blast with SweepStakes tonight. And also, I really hope to see everybody around soon. And Joshua, I really hope to be able to sit down and have a really long dinner with you to keep on picking that brain.
Happy to do so. It was great meeting you at G2E officially, and really great to have this chat tonight. And so great to chat with everybody here in the chat. Really appreciate you giving us some of your time.
Thank you so much, everybody. I hope you have a great night. And right after this, I'm heading over to the Slot Bandits live since they're live right now. See you, everybody. Bye-bye.
Have a good night.